We will start our meeting. I am going to do a roll call to my left.
Jenny Rosafart.
Jerry Burmeister,
Jenny Sisson.
James King.
And do we have anyone online yet?
I was online at Jeff Graham's.
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
We
Yep.
can.
Thank you.
And Kyle. So we have a roll call and we have a quorum, so we can begin. We have no old business to report, so I'm sorry, I skipped our previous minutes. We will go up and approve the previous minutes, so everyone can look at those.
I make a motion to accept the minutes from previous meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Do we need a
Yes.
roll call since we have one online? So we have to do a roll call to my left.
Jenny Rosafart.
Jerry Burmeister,
Jenny Sisson.
James King. Aye.
Kyle Icorn, yes.
Thank you. So we have our previous minutes approved. We have no old business, so we will skip down to new business. Looks like we have one withdrawn for this meeting. So we will go down to B, which is V03212023-02, the variance from the development standards to request to allow an additional two-car driveway on the parcel of the public right-of-way in the single-family small lot, the SF-3 zoning district at 140 Hawthorne Drive.
Before I begin, I would like to just place on the record the petition that was filed by Jeff Hearn that V03212023-01 was formally withdrawn from tonight's agenda. He's got a few pieces that he expressed that he needed additional time to be able to gather, to conduct his public hearing notifications and so forth. So once he provides all that, he still intends to pursue this petition, but most likely it will be placed on the April BZA agenda.
That makes sense.
State that on the record. And then also, just kind of want to start off tonight, want to preference the fact that as planning staff here for tonight's matters that we have before you, that we just wanted to clarify as staff in our role here, that we are here to present the petition as filed. We are to analyze that petition according to the planning documents that our boards here for the town of Pendleton has put into place. And then we are to then report findings and facts based on those documents, whether they are facts and findings in support or perhaps in conflict to those documents. And then from there, it is your responsibility, to weigh those, to evaluate those, and then make a vote or decision based on that. So, okay. So that being said, just wanted to say for each of the petitions tonight before us, the petitioner has satisfied all the requirements. All those documents are outlined in your Google Drive, anywhere from providing the warranty deed, the record of deed, most current, the affidavit saying that the certificate of mailings have been satisfied and sent out. Our public hearing notices were timely filed as well. And that all the documents are there in your Google Drive, as well as including a quick reference of what different standards and development standards that apply to the two petitions tonight. They are there for quick reference for you as well. And then last, just wanted to note that there's not been any notification, any negative feedback that we have received in writing or verbally about any of the petitions that are presented tonight. So for our first petition, it is regarding property at 140 Hawthorne Drive. And the property owner is Shane and Melissa Davis. Shane and Melissa Davis are en route. The meeting was in conflict with previous May travel plans. but they do have here representing them, the parent of Shane Davis. It is Tracy and Carrie Davis here. They're back here available for any questions, relaying any information that Shane has, given to them. And he was going to try to zoom in, but again, he is in flight now, and I don't know if he's been able to make contact. So we'll go ahead and present, and then the board can decide if you feel that it is good timing to make a decision tonight, or we could always move to continue. The property there at 140 Hawthorne Drive, it is zoned single-family residential. It is deemed a small lot, SF3. The property is 0.52 of an acre. This is a little bit of a unique SF3 property just because it's almost or a little over a half of an acre. Most of them are about 7,300 square feet. This one was a little bit over 22,500 square feet. So it's a little bit unique, but it falls within a subdivision, which is the Pines at Deerfield off of North Pendleton Avenue, which collectively it's a combination of a smaller square footage lots to larger. So this is this particular parcel falls within a roadway that has several different half-acre properties there. On this property, there is 11 feet right-of-way that is off of the roadway. From what we best understand, that right-of-way it is a little bit larger than most of our homes. Most of our properties, residential properties, are somewhere between 5 and 8. So this is a little bit deeper than the norm. But one of the reasons for that is that there was some potential future plans for some sidewalk installment there in that neighborhood. So I think that that's probably why they had requested a little bit deeper setback on that. Utilities regarding this property that I'm not saying they're in conflict, but yet will be impacted with this improvement if it is approved, is utilities with gas. CenterPoint Energy is the gas line provider. That there's a unit that is towards the rear of the home that, in speaking to the property owner, will need to be replaced or repositioned. And also there is a water meter pit that is owned and maintained by the town of Pendleton. That water meter pit sits about 23 to 24 feet off of the roadway and about 2 feet or about 4 feet west of the current existing driveway there. It is not unusual to have a water pit in a driveway, but that's just something that we want to keep in mind going forward. If the driveway is extended there, we just want to make sure that easement and that utility is safely preserved during construction. The variance that the petitioners is seeking tonight, the next page there, is they currently have a 22-foot wide driveway that services a 2-car garage, attached 2-car garage. They would like to add an additional 2-car garage to the west, which would recess to the current front garage there, as illustrated there in the picture. But in doing so, they would like to extend their current drive by 2 feet, which would make it 24. The access management and control ordinance, what it does provide is that if you have more than a 2-bay garage, you can have a width at the right-of-way, a driveway throat width at 24 feet. So they're asking to meet that 24 feet width for the current drive, but then they also would like to install to service that additional 2-car garage in the future, an additional 24 by 48 approximate length driveway to service that. And what they are asking is that they would like for that to connect to the roadway, not just to the line of public right-of-way. And so that's going to put about a 48-foot total driveway throat at the right-of-way there to connect to the roadway. The maximum impervious surface for this property, the maximum is currently 40%. With the uniqueness of this property and being fairly large, the current coverage for the impervious surface is only 17%. If they do install a 2-car garage, potentially about a 24 by 24 structure, and the driveway to service that, their coverage would go up to 25%. As far as standards, and again, we've outlined a little bit more in detail in your Google Drive, but some of the main standards that apply to this request, the driveway throat width cannot be more than 18 feet at the right of way for a 2-car garage. Driveway throat width no more than 24 feet at the right of way for a greater than a 2-bay garage. This image here that's provided, oops, sorry. It's okay. What is illustrated on this second slide is if the improvements were made to be in compliance with the guidelines, that's what it could look like. That's it would allow that 2 feet extension, the 5 feet tapers on each side of the driveway that connects to the roadway, and then they would could angle up and just staying, say, north of that public right-of-way to extend on beyond that right-of-way area. So both Hannah, Rose, and I have sat down with the petitioner and drew out what his options were to be in compliance without requiring coming before the Board of Zoning Appeals to seek this variance. But that's what can be is permitted. But again, he has expressed that he, amongst other neighboring property owners, have an interest to see if this standard can be reconsidered for their larger parcel sizes. Clear vision area at the intersection, you'll see there. Actually, I would say, yeah, apologize.
There's an intersection, right?
The-
south of that.
Yeah, there's Sycamore Lane that is just south of this southwest of the property that connects in. You can see on that very front screen for the zoning image, you can see that it does sit at a 3-way intersection there. It is just a cul-de-sac.
It's a stub
Yes,
essentially with just the two
Yes.
homes. So
Yes.
it's not like your traditional, yeah.
yes. And so there is a clear vision area at the intersection. It is not to exceed 25 feet. Currently, you're right under it. If it were to extend that driveway to the west, it would impede upon that clear vision, or potentially could impede upon that, you know. But again, it is a cul-de-sac. It's not a roadway that's a thorough through the neighborhood. So. And then as far as just the public right-of-ways, our regulations outlined in the Access Management and Control Ordinance document that we really, this is probably one of the first times we're really diving deep into that ordinance. So, which is good. But those regulations were set at a minimum that they felt that could be enforced in order to preserve public utilities, street structures, sidewalks, and all the while promoting public safety, safe travel, and also access for ingress and egress. So that being said, that is the petition as applied and presented to us. We would love, you know, we open the floor, or if the Davises would like to add any comments or anything, or anything you'd like to add? I know you're residential in the
Correct.
same area.
I live at
You want to come up
130.
here?
We live at 130, which is just directly to the east of Shane, and we don't see any issues. The cul-de-sac that you're talking about that's in front of his house, there are 2 neighbors, their yards adjoin that cul-de-sac, so their garages come out into that little roadway there. So I don't see that anybody would have any objection to bringing the drive all the way to the road. It'll also look better than just putting the piece of concrete beside there. So that's why, that's all we need to say. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. We appreciate that.
And we did not have any letters, correct?
We did not, no,
Okay.
we did not have any response, no formal letters submitted.
So the neighbors right around them all have been notified.
Yes, they have, yes, we
Yeah.
got the certificate of mailing receipts notifying, I think he had 16 or 17 different parcels that he had to notify within 150 feet radius.
So it wasn't just published in the paper.
And it also was published in the paper, yes, Times Post and Herald Bulletin.
Just a quick question, was any consideration given to a compromise between the 24-foot that's allowed in the ordinance and the 48 that they're requesting, something between the two, like 36?
Has he?
I mean, some of the new houses that have 3-car garages have a sort of a round, swoop in the driveway.
Yes, yes. And we did illustrate that to him, that he can do that. He would not even touch even that impervious surface coverage by doing that. So yes, he would stay in full compliance if he widened out after the public right of way. That would be-
No, I was thinking that the actual access area that touches the street instead of being
Splitting the
24.
difference.
Yeah, so split the difference like
I
36
don't think
feet.
that was approached,
No.
but,
I mean, it looks like the property next door has somewhat wider
yeah.
Yes, and it's
than
31
24 feet. Yeah.
Mhm. Yes,
So,
and a lot of those are legal non-conforming and they do, there are several properties there in that neighborhood that do have a wider slope.
And eventually, if there's that sidewalk there, if they went with that plan, you're gonna have a very small strip of grass.
This
Would
one,
have
yeah,
to
this,
Yeah.
Yeah,
That-
really.
that would just
so-
kind of stand out as being unattractive in my mind, the way it's with just the,
Where it stops.
where it stops there and has the 2 wedges on the side.
Mhm.
I don't think that would look great.
And again, if there will be a sidewalk there at some point.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, and when speaking in sidewalk, I get what you're saying with not having it taper in and out like that.
Yeah.
But you'll also want to consider, the amount of vehicles that might be on the driveway impeding flow of the sidewalk. We have issues with that in other parts of town, where people are parking in the sidewalk areas and it becomes unpassable for ADA compliance.
Well, with this garage set back further,
Mhm.
that gives more length anyway, so I think that
Yeah.
helps with that issue.
I mean, the picture in the folder has a pretty big motorhome. Is the garage gonna be big enough to push the motorhome into, or is it gonna still be sitting out? Or do you know what the clearance length is?
I'm
But
sorry.
the depth of the garage, would it be able to house that camper or the boat? As I say, the
Oh,
other day, it was not there when I went there. the other
Okay,
day.
in the old picture.
My, in fact, my driveway is wider than the 24 feet. You can't see it, but it's considerably wider than the 24 feet going all the way out to the road, just like I say to the east.
Yeah.
But the reason for the driveway is he has 2 teenage sons that are, one of them's getting ready to get their license. The other one's only a year or 2 away. And so the driveway, plus they got 3 cars themselves, let alone the other 2, so there's 5 vehicles.
Yeah.
So he needs the room for parking.
The access management control does guide the distance between the 2 property driveways. If he were to extend out to 48 feet, it would still be under or more than the minimum that Plan Commission or BZA can approve. The minimum would be 65 feet. If he extended out to the roadway 48, it's 82 feet.
Do we have any other questions from the board? Kyle, do you have any questions regarding this?
No, I was just looking, as far as the sight vision triangle, you look to the east down at Beach Lane, and there's a driveway lined up with that street. So I don't see necessarily any concerns from a sight vision perspective. And, the impervious area is well below the limit. So from a drainage aspect, it shouldn't be detrimental. And it definitely, like others have said, it looks better when it's extended out to the street. So, I think from those aspects, it makes sense. So,
And there's plenty of space between.
and I guess the thought would be if we approve this, then, we need to just spell out, the justification, because it's going to be looked upon as a basis for future determinations in the neighborhood. So,
Well, I do think what is listed here is a good basis for spelling that out. Because this is a bigger lot, that's probably one of the biggest, which most of these lots would not be conforming to that.
It's wider than the ones behind it. Are you talking about same neighborhood, different street?
But even on those, a lot of those have not quite this size, but a little bit bigger.
I did have one quick question. So that you mentioned the access control ordinance has a 65-foot distance between adjacent driveways. Is that what I heard correctly, or?
Yes, according to the speed limit of 30 miles per hour, believe it is, look that up.
Oh, is it table 1-1? Well,
Yes, so for the minimum spacing that's suggested by the access management control is 180 feet, center to center on those driveways. Currently, it's at 95 feet. With the variance center to center, if they extended that to the full 48, it would leave it at 82. But according to the provisions outlined in the access management control ordinance, it indicates that the least that they can make a variance for, and there's some other provisions of stating that if the property size, road frontage is not large enough to accommodate that spacing, but yet they were systematically placed to where it was on the farthest end of each property to where it was the farthest distance between the two, it could be permitted, but it also indicated a minimum of 65 feet variance that Plan Commission could approve, say, a primary plat or site plan development came in. So it would still be more than that minimum.
I also see in the access management and control ordinance, table 1.2 says minimum spacing for a driveway 75 feet along a local. So we would meet that requirement as well with the proposal. Correct?
So if you
Yes.
count the, yeah, the intersection, you're talking about the local street distance from the drive to the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 30 feet. I think currently where the placement is of the drive, it might be 50, but it extends on down to the west, it would be about 30 feet. But as far as a full intersection towards the west or towards Pendleton Avenue, yes, it would meet that requirement. If you did not count the cul-de-sacs for that. It just serves as kind of a T intersection there.
Do we have any other questions? Do we have any motion to approve? Per the, I'll go down to that analysis list.
Yes, and we would like to, if we could, if I could go ahead and read the functioning of the planning department is to analyze the petition against the approved and relevant plans and ordinances, as well as any existing conditions and or variances placed upon the site to present facts and analysis. Based on that analysis, staff has the following comments. So the proposed 25% impervious surface coverage inclusive of the additional driveway and that 2-bay garage addition falls well under that 40% maximum for the single family zoning district. Front and sidewalk or side yard setbacks are not compromised. Even with the addition, they'll still have 15 feet side yard setback. The relocation of public utilities and street structures and associated costs would be the responsibility of the property owner. If, say, we had a water leak there from the meter pit to the road, there are some provisions that we can work with him just as a precautionary measure that, say that earth movement gets shifted and causes a leak in that water line. We can put in a supplemental line if he would so choose. But other than that, I think he's got a mailbox that he will need to relocate as well. Yeah, on that though. Site visibility and clear vision area and minimum intersection site distance would not be met if the driveway were to be extended. But it is a residential area and that area, that intersection is serving just a few homes there off of that cul-de-sac. And as far as the items that you have for consideration, each and every one of them need to be found kind of in support, to make a favorable recommendation on this petition. These are outlined in your presentation here before you. And that being said, I'll turn it
So
over.
we can approve this with or without conditions or commitments, deny or continue.
And then I would invite anyone in the audience to.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we did
Another
that.
comment.
Do we have any other comments?
I know that they were on behalf of.
Okay. Any other
Yeah.
comments? So we have no other comments. So do we have a motion then to approve with no conditions and approve as listed and as presented?
Kyle, are you okay with this?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I mean, with the lot size and it's not at a busy intersection. I feel like it's, the findings of fact there cover the bullet points, and I think it makes sense and provides a sound foundation for the decision. I'm comfortable with it.
I make a motion that we accept this.
So we have one motion. Do we have a second motion? So we have a second motion to approve. Go back up here. So it's B 03212023-02. That's 140 Hawthorne Drive for the Davises, as approved as presented. So I will let you move on to our next agenda.
No, we gotta vote.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Roll call, please.
late. So we will do a roll call here to my left.
Terry Burmeister,
Jenny Sisson.
James King, yes.
Carl Icorn, yes.
So we have approved that. Thank you.
And I will get the findings of facts prepared and we'll get that to you.
Okay, thank you. I will let you move on to the next agenda item. And you're free
Thank you again for
to
coming.
stay or you can head on out if you'd like.
I think we'll go on. that.
Go on out.
We're not doing
Thank you
anything
for
else
coming.
riveting. So.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
All right, same thing kind of applies to this petition here in front of us tonight. This petition was filed by Civil Site Group representing BDC Realty Group. Owner of the BDC Realty Group is Dave Cravens. He is also here present with us. He is here behind me. And then also this is Brian Cross here that is representing Mr. Cravens on this petition. This particular variance from development standards applies within a property at 6933 South State Road 67. In front of you is an image illustrating the zoning of this parcel. It is a general business zoning district. The property is just a little bit over 1 acre at 1.25 acres. The property is currently vacant. It was a previous site for the Swifty gas station. Right there, kind of across the street from the Real Estate Pros building, just north of the Water Street and State Road 67 intersection. So, and as far as on this particular property, petitioner also has complied with all of the filing requirements. They have also at this point have conducted environmental study. That permit has been complete. NDOT has indicated that there is no additional information that they need on that site regarding environmental analysis. Also, a traffic operations analysis also has been completed and provided to the town of Pendleton. The intended use for this particular parcel, they are interested in using it as a retail. It would be a little bit over 10,000 square feet, a little bit over 10,500 square feet, which would fall under a medium retail general business. And they are looking at going under contract for Dollar Tree and it is Dollar Tree and Family Dollar there. That would go.
It's just.
Just Dollar Tree now. Okay. Okay. So, and it is a permitted use within the general business. The variance from development standards that they are seeking is on the next page. And those include, there's 5, the 5th and 6th are pretty much the same, but it's phrased and mentioned 2 different places within the UDO, the Unified Development Ordinance. But the first variance that they are seeking, they're asking to be permitted to have a 75% impervious surface coverage. For general business, the maximum allowed is 60%. The second variance is that there is a loading area requirement that is required to be rear only for properties that are adjacent to a primary arterial road, which State Road 67 falls within that road classification. They are proposing a side load on the north side of the structure. The third variance is that they are seeking a variance from the maximum front parking spaces, which are parking spaces that fall in front of the front facade of the building. The requirement is that no more than 50% of the minimum number of parking spaces required. So for this particular parcel, it's based on the square footage. So 10,500, when you divide that into 300 square feet, it allows them a minimum of 35 parking spaces, in which 2 of them have to be barrier-free parking spaces. But for that minimum, so no matter and what they're proposing in their site plan, and it's preliminary at this point, we want to make sure that that's clear. In that site plan, they're proposing 43 total parking spaces. So they want to go above that minimum, which they can, but the maximum of front parking spaces is still based on that maximum 50% of the minimum. So at most, they, per the UDO, would be about 17 and a half, 18 parking spaces up front. The third is pertaining to the perimeter buffer along the right-of-way. They are required to provide a 10-foot landscape buffer along State Road 67 along that right-of-way. You could see in the picture on the next slide, you could see where it narrows and it provides anywhere from 0 or maybe a couple of feet there on the most south end, but extends on to more than the minimum at 30 feet there on the north end on that buffer yard. And then the last variances that they're seeking pertain to just the buffer yards around the perimeter of the lot. So for that, there is a requirement of a 15-foot buffer yard on the north, south, and west property lines. They have, there's no issue meeting it on the most south part. There's probably about, I'd say about 30 to 40 feet that they're providing in landscaping over on the south end. So they're only seeking a variance there on the west and then the north end. So right in this area, so just shy of the blue lines here, you can kind of see how it's lined out on the rear of the building there, which is on the west end. They are able to provide that minimum 15 feet in most areas. It's 15 to 20 feet, except for you'll see that it falls shy to the mechanical landing pad for HVAC or HVAC units and so forth. So it would fall short of that, probably only providing about maybe 5 feet of buffer. And then same, it goes for where the dumpster area is there on the rear north side of the property. Other than that, for the most part, the buffer yard requirements are met. Parking lot, landscape areas are adequately met. They are not really seeking a variance from the quantity and the species type that is required by the Unified Development Ordinance for the landscaping. They're just seeking that in those areas. And also there is a potential that they may, when they get to the site development plan, they might be able to move those mechanical equipment pieces to the roof. So that may allow them to meet that, but at this point, it's looking like they may have to accommodate that there on the ground. So that being said, I wanted to also point out that there along I-67, you'll see this kind of the circle area here that just sits at the blue line is the right-of-way line. That area between that right-of-way line and State Road 67 is NDOT right-of-way, and that is 40 feet right-of-way. That right-of-way is also green space, so we wanted to point that out. There's not any intent to change that, so that will give an appearance of some additional green space there, but it just can't go in the calculation for them. So that's why they're seeking these variances. Like I said, all their landscape requirements, even foundation, plantings, quantity, parking lot, and so forth will be met. Also wanted to point out that there is some uniqueness to this property. This property is subject to a very deep setback. That setback is 75 feet, being that it is an NDOT right-of-way. It is a primary arterial road, so that front of the building has to set back 75 feet from the right-of-way. And then also we've got other constraints. The property is only 1.25 acres. So they're limited on what they're working with, what existing topography and green space that they have available. And they're pretty much landlocked with the surrounding parcels and buildings and parking lots that kind of eliminate some other options that could be available to the property owner. In regards to that rear loading, that's kind of one of the reasons why they have designated that most north end of the store. They're kind of by the dumpster. As you see, they have not allowed any parking there. So that is just going to be an area designated strictly for loading. That loading will not be a loading berth. It will not be a ramp or anything. It's going to be a typical standard door that the driver will come in, either back in, unload. Most of those deliveries take place very early morning when there's minimal traffic. So it should not impede upon traffic flow. And allowing this option will prevent that interference as far as on the roadway and interference with traffic. Before we provide our staff report and our findings and so forth, I would like to turn it over to Brian if there's anything you'd like to add and questions that you have.
Hi, good evening. Brian Cross, with Symbol Site Group, offices at 718 Adams Street, Suite E in Carmel. Here with Dave Cravens, BDC Realty. You did a really good job presenting the petition. Just to touch on a few things, we've been working with staff since January on this, back and forth with some concept plans, moving this ideas back and forth. We really got a good handle in early February on what the actual ordinance requirements were. We made a lot of adaptations to the site plan due to that. Unfortunately, we couldn't get all the way there, every single one of them. So what we presented to you this evening is, the site plan that we both agree on at this point with the variances and development standards that we're requesting would give both the uniqueness of this property an opportunity to be redeveloped, along with meeting most of the conditions of the UDO. I think with this size of the property, maximizing its use, land use for the building, the general business district, and this redevelopment from the gas station to this retail is a good land use. And we are working with NDOT on a driveway permit adaptation as well. So that is State Road 67. So that application will go through NDOT directly. We have a traffic study that was done last year, an operational analysis showing, level of service entering and exiting this property, and all is within compliance, regulatory standards of that for engineering. So, one thing I would say is Denise touched on the HVAC units. It's more than likely that those probably will be moved to the rooftop. So that will add some additional green space there in the rear as well. As far as the loading area, there is no truck dock, there's no ramp, there's no overhead door there. It's literally just a delivery door, 2 double swinging doors. The truck has a lift gate in the back, so they'll bring pallets in and deliver through there. It's very similar to an existing retail building across the street. They operate the same way with their deliveries. So I think we presented a site plan that tries to meet the UDO in most of the situations, but there are some uniqueness things with this property, with the setback, the right of way from NDOT, and trying to fit everything that we need to have done there for a retail building. After answering your questions, one thing I'll correct Denise on earlier was she was talking about the environmental. It was IDEM, not NDOT. So IDEM has the no further action letter has been issued on this property. So there's no more environmental mitigation to be done with this property.
Quick question on the parking lot. The front spaces that you were trying to explain, Denise, what's the reasoning behind the low number of spots in the front compared to the total?
Yeah, I think just because there's a lot of ingress and egress that's coming in and out of the property, just trying to preserve as much to the side and rear. We just don't have that option for the property there to have any rear. And then as well as then north is taken up for the loading purposes. But yes, it's just to enhance the public safety, people pulling in, pulling out, line of sight.
Okay.
And this south part, that connects up to the other property, doesn't it, Anita's? Yeah,
It's like there's a
that
big
entire complex, yes.
concrete apron
It'll be
that
cut
connects the
off.
two.
It'll be curved. That driveway is not supposed to exist. Because if it were to remain open, it would be a cross access into a driveway, which is a no-no. So it is going to be curved off, and that'll be part of your NDOT driveway permit. We'll need to close that. I'm not sure when it opened or it had a permit, but I imagine it was quite a long time ago.
And then as far as you know, the loading of the truck, I know it was mentioned early morning. That's coming off of a busier road compared to across the street that have the side road first. I'm thinking of backing up. There's really no backing up off of 67 as fast as people
Yeah.
drive. So just a little bit about maneuvering that.
I think that was one of the reasons why they are proposing to keep and retain the existing two ingress and egress areas to allow them to be able to come in off the highway, to be able to then back up and then
To have enough
yes,
swing.
back up
Yeah.
internally instead of.
Safety. It's huge, yeah.
One thing I do want to point out also, oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to, Dave Craven's 6274 Fox Chase, been on Indiana. But when you take consideration retail, and I've been in retail businesses for 30 years, you have employee parking on the south side, and with a 10,500 square foot retail building, the amount of customers per hour you're going to have. And then on our parking spaces to the south, there's already 24 feet space in between those for cars to back up and pull out. If we eliminate spaces, then people are just going to pull in. You add the employees and then the customers in, and then people are going to start pulling in, blocking cars in, pulling in. And then in addition, we had a study done, it's called a WB 67 for semis pulling in for delivery. We submitted 4 of those to Dollar Tree, how they pull in, how they pull out, and the importance of having both those cuts for IDOTs. That's the reason why I did a traffic study almost a year ago.
If I, oh, sorry.
Is that on the graphic? It looks like a semi truck with trailer and almost a line that goes around where they would pull in the south entrance, pull to the north, and then it would be pretty easy to back up.
Kind of see the templates here.
So they come in
Oh,
like
that
this,
makes that better. Mhm.
like that.
That's what I had visualized in my mind, how they would do it, like you said.
And with those parking spaces, 22 of the 26 are actually, say, in that front that go along the right of way. 4 of the 26 are actually side front parking spaces. They just fall kind of in front or partially in front of the front facade. So 4 of those, so it's, you know, the way that it's set, about 18 would be permitted. In that front area, there's actually only 22 versus 26, the other additional 4 over to the side.
So with the impervious surface, proposed is 75, permitted is 60. Let's talk about the stormwater drain, the drain off if we could.
Yeah, sure. So I like those questions, engineering stuff. So this site.
Kyle usually does, he's online, but I thought I would.
So this site generally currently drains from where the convenience store building was located in the middle of the property, and it all kind of drains to the right of way of NDOT and to the northeast corner of this property. That general drainage pattern will still occur, but working with NDOT, you have to provide different detention requirements when you increase the impervious area of the property. So in this particular development, we'll be looking to do some storm sewer systems with oversized pipes. Then we'll throttle that water down to a smaller release rate, and it'll still go to the NDOT right away, but it won't increase, actually decrease the stormwater runoff going into the right of way.
It's a pretty deep ditch there anyway. It's probably about 8-10 feet deep both ways there at that swell. So they did mention that in our meetings, Hannah, Rose and I, that they've already got plans for stormwater control there for that one.
And I know Denise, you mentioned there's no current widening plans in that section of 67, but we are seeing possible sections along 67, just not there. If 10 years from now, because we have growth, if that does widen, and we are seeing increased traffic. I'm thinking safety and how that would be handled, or would the road on the east be widened and not so much the west toward this building?
There's a
Question.
Scott and is working with.
They're gonna add
Yes,
lanes.
36.
They
But
are,
they're not, project there is under design now to add lanes up to Water Street.
and so,
So the next block of work will
One of the,
be wide lanes there too.
one of the original studies back in 2008 by IDOT, when they originally was supposed to come from Huntsville Road all the way down through there, when he was going to ride in that, it wasn't on that side of the property, it was on the opposite side, where the Keller Williams is, what that side was. That was 2008, supposed to happen in 2010, and the state ran out of money.
Yeah, they have already purchased some ground at the intersection.
And- and I
But
know
that's on the west side.
there are monies now for road improvement. That's kind of a state agenda. So that's why I'm trying to think.
And they are
forward to make,
preserving that NDOT right away, that 40 feet
okay.
right away.
Did
So-
you
Not
mention,
competing
Denise,
on
there's a
that.
large area out front there?
Yes.
There
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
but even when that's widened,
Yeah, I agree.
how does
Yeah.
that impact them? If we were to approve this,
Mhm.
how would, if we add additional lanes, I mean, from a safety standpoint, and then I know we've talked about trails, connectivity. How does that factor into this piece of town? And if so, is that something we should be thinking of to work within this plan right now?
I would,
You know what,
say,
I, I think when NDOT comes, those are very good thoughts, but it's NDOT's problem when they decide to do that, because it could be 3 years from now, we start designing. 10 years from now.
And before we can issue a building permit, we do have to have permits from NDOT
Right.
approving that
Right.
they've reviewed this thoroughly.
So do we have any sidewalks or anything on this side?
Not in the bike and pedestrian plan. For what I've seen, I've not seen any development visioned or proposed or put in writing for I-67. There is some, a little bit on State Street, but that is our jurisdiction.
There is trail and sidewalk going in on 67, not the additional lane.
yes, it's in a.
And then the long range plan is the trail actually behind Dairy Queen onto 8. And then that would connect to Water Street. We're still short here, so I mean, this is. a
Yeah,
good
because
point.
it could go into.
So if we put sidewalk or trail in there, that'll be an enhancement that we'll probably participate in not. But once again, that's sort of gonna be on
Right, because it's
Yeah.
theirs.
right.
And what they're developing as far as parking lot and so forth, it's not an additional further encroachment on NDOT or, that right of way. Just working with and cleaning up what that existing pavement is there. Building actually is going to sit back farther than some of those gas station structures that were there, sitting up more farther due east.
Have we thought of just a small sidewalk to connect these two parking lots? So it would just be, because I can see people
Well, we'd have-
walking all
Yeah, it would have to
through.
be, it would have to be an NDOT project. I mean, we could pay for it, but.
Yeah,
So,
because
I
they're
mean,
right
you're
of
bringing up good
ways.
points and common
Yeah.
sense. Doesn't-
I just want to think
NDOT, as you
through,
know,
all
NDOT
of our
doesn't always
plans.
feel like they're having common sense, and they're
You said that on the record.
on the record. Sometimes I said it doesn't seem like it, but generally, their long-range planning is until there's a warrant and it's in front of them, they tend not to
Yeah.
spend the money. They spend the money when it's a reality. There's a problem that exists now.
And
So,
I get what you're saying with cross-access easement for pedestrians. That has to be something that all bodies are on board with, where it works better in completely new development, where it's required as it goes, whereas this is landlocked. So it could be proposed, but it would have to be if this property owner is willing to put sidewalk to his property line.
But-
which might not happen, and we can't require it.
what was that, the sidewalk?
Yeah, like a pedestrian path from like a.
Yeah, so
parking
what
lot.
I would recommend, now that you brought that up, actually, that they do connect it, because that's gonna be more
But we can't.
customers. I know, but I mean, they can
Yeah.
work together with the two.
Correct, yes.
Right.
I don't have a problem with having a sidewalk down there. If me and him split the cost of a 10-foot sidewalk, 5-foot wide. That's not, an issue.
The problem is if you do that, nobody else does that. I mean, where's that sidewalk gonna go to? To walk to the parking lot, I guess. the one
It would be
business.
contingent upon if the property owner to the south and kind of around this property is on board with that. If not, it would be impractical.
And if you think about the amount of retail traffic you get in that shopping center to the south, how many people are gonna walk there to Dollar Tree, how many people are gonna walk Dollar Tree to there? But most of those places are closed by 6 and they're a destination stop as far as retail. The Anita's closes early, the nail place closes early, and the vacancy rate there is about 50 or 60%. So it's kind of really advantageous, really, that I'm always willing to be a good neighbor and work with people in the city, so.
I just think, the overall goal was eventually to have the connectivity throughout. And thinking of those that I see walking, or honestly, like I see someone in a wheelchair at times. So we do have it throughout town, so.
Yeah.
I just want to think out loud on the record here. Kyle, do you have any questions on this plan? This proposal?
Yes, while we're talking about the pedestrian access, my concern would be you've got these busy entrances with people zooming in and off of State Road 67. You may not want to have a bunch of pedestrian traffic up there that people aren't expecting. Potentially, I mean, if anything, you'd want to connect it to the west or to the north to the existing parking lots, for like nursing home residents to walk over, or, something like that, more than you have people walking along
Yeah,
State Road 67, but
Two parking lots.
yeah. And I guess just to maybe talk about what they're requesting variances from, as far as the impervious surface coverage goes, it looks like the existing site has quite a bit of an existing impervious. And I assume that their final site plan would be reviewed by our drainage engineer for compliance with the stormwater ordinance. Is that correct?
Correct.
So I mean, as long as it meets the stormwater release rates of our ordinance, I don't really see the increase in impervious coverage being an issue. And then the other ones really are covered by the uniqueness of an infill site that has a lot of NDOT frontage and is boxed in on 3 sides by existing development. So, I think the variances make sense with the uniqueness of the site. And as far as if they meet the drainage requirements, then the impervious area is not really an issue either. So I think it all makes sense.
They have plans for that, Kyle, so.
Yeah, yep, I think it all makes sense to me, so.
On that same subject, quick question might be for Denise. Earlier with the impervious surface on the residential property, you said there was permitted, and then there's a little bit more wiggle room for waivable. If the BZA or planning authority decides that it's in everybody's best interest to have less or more important impervious surface, that in this case it's 60 or it's 75. Is there a limit to that too? Is it within that limit? Or,
So.
you know what I'm saying?
That minimum that I was referencing, that plan commission BZA, can go down to that minimum. That was the center point of one drive to center point to another access drive. That was what those numbers were.
But there's no
Impervious
limits
surface-
on the impervious surface. like you're
Impervious
saying.
surface
Okay.
for residential is 40%. So he is currently, I think, is at 17%.
Going to 25.
With the additions, it would be up to 25. Yes,
okay.
yes. And then for this petition, it is 60%. It's currently at 55% impervious surface. So it falls a little bit under the maximum currently, but trying to, to accommodate and to allow a development, for retail benefit and enough square footage, to service, that increase would only be up by 15%.
More for education than anything else.
Yeah, yeah.
And it is a kind of a, not I'd say landlocked, a building locked lot.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it's a unique piece of land or property, the way it lays. And I think what they've come up with for that odd shaped land, I think is very good.
Very minor.
So do I have any other questions from the board? Kyle? Do you
I don't have no other questions for me. So.
Any other questions from our audience or input?
I just like to say it's going to create 15 to 25 jobs and economic development of $1 million to $1.5 million to the community.
Very good to see economic growth here.
And that piece developed that property.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
also
in a
ties
very
into
hard
the-
to develop property.
Yeah.
the Pendleton interchange plan. It also ties into that, but the retail development from 2020 through 2035.
Also,
Good to know.
I am familiar with some of Dave's properties that he has built from ground up like this. Several different towns, several different areas. Dave always does a nice looking building, a nice looking site. Yeah, I just wanted to have that in there. He does a good job.
Yeah, and just wanted to point out our staff findings and facts there on the last page, and I'm glad you brought that up, that there is no other architectural development standards that they perceive the need to present. If we get to the site development plan process, which would be the next step, and technical review committee reviews that. If we do see a need for any other further variances, we will definitely bring it back before the board before we approve. Move forward. They outlined in their application that they anticipated going above and beyond architecture.
So we can, for the board, approve with or without conditions or commitments, deny or continue this. If we choose to approve, we need to then again make sure that we've analyzed that according to, if you're at the bottom of that list there, the requirements that would make that feasible, because again, we have to compare that with future presentations and we have to justify why we feel these variances would still meet safety needs and the other requirements as listed. So if I could ask the staff if there is a nomination to approve this as presented, again, with or without conditions or commitments.
Kyle, are you okay with this?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. And I guess, with the, asking for a motion for approval, that would include adopting the planning staff analysis on the page 10 of the presentation as our findings of fact, because I think that does a good job of kind of spelling out and addressing those 5 bullet points, So I would just add that. But yeah, I think that, they've gone back and forth with staff and engineered the site to meet as much as possible. So this is kind of the minimum, and that's one of the factors in there, is this is the least they need to make the site work and meet as many requirements as possible. So I think it's a good fit.
I am okay with making a motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we accept this.
And then you need to
The
include with
conditions would be the 5 bullet points.
the findings and facts.
Yes, the findings and facts.
I'll second that.
Do we have a second? Can we have, I guess, everyone who approves this? Say yes. Aye.
Aye.
Video, so.
Oh, I was gonna do that and then roll call. That's how we've been doing it. So everyone to approve this, say aye.
Aye.
And then to
Aye.
my left, we will do a roll call.
Jamila Zafar.
Jerry Burmeister.
Jenny Sisson.
James King.
Kyle Icorn, yes.
So we have a motion then to approve this as stated. That's, and our meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.